What makes a place special? Is it the things that fill the space, or is it the intention behind the creation of something unique? Adriana Mendoza, co founder of Femme Fatale in Washington, D.C., shares a bit more about the creative energies required to create a retail shop, an event space, and most importantly, a place where the community can gather. I've known Adriana for a little more than a year. We got introduced because I was hosting a lot of events and she had a beautiful space. I really enjoyed our friendship, learning from her about how DC has changed and how creative it actually is. In our conversation, we share what it means to infuse energy into a business, into a physical space, the power of community coming together to help one another, the feminine and the masculine, and entrepreneurship. How the most important part is to get started. And tell me again about the story about Femme Fatale, how it started.
Yeah, so I went to, I think one of my favorite ways to start out the story is if you were to go to our website and were to look under our story, I love this small summary of, the very beginning, and then I'll go further into that. But it reads, Chapter 1, Coming Together became building together. Before becoming a brand, we were a movement of women coming together, carving out room for their ideas, their bodies, and their communities. By women, for women. Cultivating connection across the district, we gathered, we played, we chilled, and we hustled. I think that really embodies, the very start of Femme Fatale DC. And what it was all about. It really was at that time in 2016, October 2016, it was a movement. And it actually wasn't even a conceptualized movement, right? It began in October 31st, 2016, as a Halloween party. And the name Femme Fatale was not even in existence. And so it was a gathering of women to come together in a space just to connect and really vibe off of each other's energies. And, after that party, there were women coming up and asking, like, when is the next event? When is the next party? And it was like, wow, so this is actually really needed. Not only was it something that we needed, but it was something that other women needed. They needed space to really be vulnerable and let their guards down. And so from that party came a series of events that were carried out once a month in different locations throughout DC. And these events, they spanned anything from a fashion show to open mics, to parties that would highlight different entrepreneurs as well as artists, right? There was always a component of really just highlighting the talents that were in the city. And at that time, there weren't a lot of pop-ups happening. The word pop-up just wasn't even a thing. So it's quite actually amazing just to see in 4 years how much growth there has been, exponential growth in this idea of pop-ups, right? But the whole concept of moving around to different places in DC for about 3 months, it was great, but there were a lot of challenges, right? Especially because these parties and these events were all women centered. And so the idea of having cis men there, that just wasn't, I mean, that was not a thing for our events. And in a lot of these venues, there were, you know, men there that would really fight against what the mission was at that time. And there were just a lot of confrontations that really started to make us think, like, well, what would it be like if we had our own space, right? Like, what if we were able to have our own events, hold space for other women entrepreneurs, and not have to deal with these issues and these confrontations with, you know, people who aren't supporting a group or a certain community, right?
That's
And so,
really funny because I had no idea that men had come to the first few events.
well, no, they actually didn't come to the events, but they were the, whether they were the owners of different venues that we hosted events in, or, you know, they might have been working at these venues. It was a really,
Oh, I see. They were
yeah,
just kind of in the periphery. They were
we
collaborators.
exactly. um and so it just became uh just very challenging to create space for what we wanted to do, and to be able to be vulnerable and, you know, let our guards down. And so in 2017, in January 2017, this idea of finding a space to call our own, you know, that seed was planted, and that seed was quickly nurtured. And, you know, what happened was, in 3 months, it really finding space was all a matter of, you know, cold calling, cold emails, you know, reaching out to different building owners, whether it was finding, you know, a building on the street with a phone number and calling. Um, and that's really, everybody always wonders, like, how do you do it? How do you find space? And it really is that simple. It's simple, but not easy, right? Because many times, you know, we would see these buildings. The buildings were super expensive, especially being in DC, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't attainable for this grassroots movement, that, you know, that we were building. So, again, with dedication, and just consistency, by March we had secured a space, our first, and what we thought was going to be our only pop-up space, that was secured in March 2017. And so that began our journey of adapting spaces, that were either in transition or waiting for new, you know, leasers to full, you know, long-term leasers to come in. And we didn't we had no clue what we were in for. Again, this was we were, you know, thinking this is going to be a one-time pop-up. We're going to do it for 3 months, right? So the idea was to do it, from May to July, and then that was it. There was no plan afterwards of what was going to happen. Um, and, you know, that time to get the space ready, that kind of set the stage for how we operate in general, right? And what that is different, women come together using the skills and their resources, to build something, you know, something that we will all benefit from. And so this pop up, this first pop up, the idea was like, again, as I mentioned before, we had always had entrepreneurs and we were always showcasing creatives, and what they're working on and what their what their passions are, and they're allowed to express that, right? And so we were putting that into the space. Um, and this space came together within a month, right? So it was literally a blank space, as all of our spaces are. They're blank spaces, blank canvases. Um, and the community began, right? We started out with, at the first pop-up, we had uh, 10 entrepreneurs that, each rented a set of spaces, about whether it was 5 by 10 or 10 by 10 spaces. Um, they were almost like stalls in a market. So like everybody had their own section, and um, we were all required to be there, right? So if at that time we had no staff, we had no POS system, right? Like we were the staff. We had to be there, and that really helped build this sense of community and that energy that, when you walk into a Femme Fatale DC pop-up, you feel that energy. That is really where this energy, you know, catalyzed itself, right? Like we knew that every pop-up had to have this energy that allowed us to build off of one another, whether it was through our conversations or by helping each other out, or inspiring one another. So, from that point on, when we closed in July of 2017, just like that party in October, people were asking, when is the next one? And so that was when we really had to think like, well, what does this mean for us? Right.
Yes.
Um,
And it's truly exciting how you are able to transform what I say dead spaces.
mhm.
I've seen the before and after photos. There is so much that goes into creating a space and creating the energy of a space as well. And so you've been able to do that 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it amazes me. There's never a time that it doesn't amaze me how that all gets done. And I think one of the most important things to really bring to light is how we transform these spaces, with such little time and such little resources, right? Um, it wasn't until recently that we began, um, getting outside grants, right? So up until this year, we have been running this show, again, just utilizing the resources of of the community that is going to be part of whatever pop up um, is being brought to light. And so usually I think the craziest pop up, the amount of time that we had to get that up and running, was actually this last pop up, and we had 15 days to get this one up and running. Um, and you know, the first two pop-ups, those spaces were very clean. They were square, they had blank walls. Like there was nothing that really that was too challenging to transform the space. But once we got to our third pop-up, that was in Tenley Town, that was number one, our biggest space. It was 8,000 square feet. It was 4 different storefronts, right? Um, and it needed the most work done to it. And I think one of the most beautiful things about our community is that when one person says, I can't, or I don't know how I can do this, right? There's another woman there saying, yes, you can, and yes, we can, right? And that is the key to making every single pop-up run and work and actually come to life. Um, and so,
Would you say that each space feels a little bit different? Like the energy each time you create a new space, like how have they differed from one another?
yeah, definitely. The underlying energy, right, has is consistent, and that is the energy of, um, again, when people ask me, number one, what is femme fatale DC, because it's such a feeling that you get, we are so physical, it is so hard to explain. But I guess the best way that I can describe it is that when you walk into one of the spaces, you instantly feel, number one, most people who are new are say, wow, what is this? Right? Like, what is a space? I had no clue that DC had a space like this. And after they get acclimated in that space, they're like, I just feel so comfortable. Like, I really feel as though I can just let my guard down and really be myself. And and so that is the underlying energy that has been consistent from day one, whether it was the parties, the monthly pop-ups or a pop-up, right? What changes, and this was something that I had to really grapple, and my partner in crime in all of this, C. Smith, who is the CEO of this, she handles more of the business side. She really helped me, understand that each pop-up, I began with the notion like we are always going to continue to, keep a core set of women, um, as we, travel in this journey. However, just like in life, that is just not the case, right? We outgrow people, or people go on to new ventures, and that was something that now I understand. That is the whole purpose of Femme Fatale DC, is that we create space for you to explore, right? I have mentioned this to you before. You come in, and Femme Fatale is, I compare it to like a sandbox in the playground, right? You come into this space and you get to explore yourself, you get to explore other, um, people, what they have to offer, and you get to really experiment. Like, that's what it's all about. And that is the energy, that is consistent. But what changes is the people. And so because the people change, so do the dynamics, right? And so in that sense, that is what changes. But other than that, that energy of being able to be, um, feel vulnerable and feel comfortable in that, and to be able to express yourself, and know that others are reflections of you. And that is, I think that's what people can consistently say is the beauty and that magic that we always talk about, that is Femme Fatale DC,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. Yes, it's so true. And, for some of the listeners that aren't as familiar with the word energy, we use it a lot. It's a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
it's a vibe, but ultimately it's how you are feeling, especially during the creation process. And
Yeah,
so you are able to create something with others because you've set the intention that you want this to be a safe space,
exactly.
a creative place. And it truly does feel like that for those who haven't visited a location, and their most recent one. When you walk in, it's truly a treasure trove. It's very cozy. And everywhere you look, there is something that you want to buy.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. And it's funny because recently, um, I guess it depends on the space, but the intention is always to make the space um, embody home, right? Home is to be comfy and to be comfortable and to provide different types of spaces because um, there's an understanding and an acceptance that we're all different. And so we're all going to take up space in different ways, right? And so when we really begin transforming these spaces, there has to be that understanding of of us humans and how we interact and to really nurture the differences that we have. And I think that's what people can really appreciate about that. But it was funny because in this pop up that we had in our event space, which honestly is probably one of my favorite event spaces that we've ever had in any pop up. Um, we have a whole bunch of pillows there, and I at least once a week when we were open, we would always get people asking if they could purchase like the pillows that we have in there, right? So like,
It's my favorite.
yeah, it's definitely a just like you said, it's a treasure chest, right? And it's open um to anybody, honestly, like to anybody. When we started this interview, I said that we started out uh with our motto, by women, for women, right? But
Hmm.
after 4 years, I think that that was very necessary at that time. But as we have evolved, what we say now is by women for all. And we truly mean that. What we do ask for is that when you walk into a space or you want to interact, that you accept, you understand, or you're open to nurturing feminine. And that is not gender based. It's we all have that quality of being receptive, and that's all that we ask. So whatever your background is, you are welcome. And again, we're exploring this new chapter of what Femme Fatale DC looks like. Um,
And how does a feminine forward place feel versus a masculine forward place?
yeah, that was something I know we had a lot of, pushback at the very beginning when we would have these women only parties, and men would show up and they were really upset. And it was something that there is a completely different, and mind you, I didn't even know that I needed this type of space, like a women only space. Um,
I mean, this was really, I think, uh, right at the cusp of women really voicing their opinions and creating more spaces for themselves. I know that
yeah,
it was definitely like one of the first places in Washington, D.C.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm born and raised in DC. I mean, there may have been something similar to this, but I had never heard of it. And people that I've come into contact with thus far, that was not in existence. Um, but again, it comes down to that word energy. It is a feeling that you get. Um, that feminine energy really touches and requires you to be open and to be able to reciprocate, and with, whether it's with yourself, right? Because that's super important. Something that we really value is really understanding who you are, and creating space for that, but also being receptive to, the people around you, and whether that's, respecting somebody, wanting to have their space but still be in this energy and of inspiration, um, or being able to reciprocate ideas or feelings or emotions, right? um, that is, we want to be heard. I think what what it comes down to at the end of the day is that we want to be able to be heard, and sometimes it's not a matter of us, um, having to get feedback, but it's just about somebody being able to listen to you um, and not be judgmental, right? I think
Hmm.
that the people that we attract into our spaces, um, can be open. I think that we all have our biases, absolutely, and I feel like we are the people, at least that, again, in our community, we are open to working on those. But yeah, I think it's that, reciprocation and receptivity that is so key to really embodying the feminine in our spaces.
And I think a good way to describe it is astrology. The sun
Mhm.
is very masculine, it's more forceful. The moon is more feminine and flowy and more watery.
Yeah.
And I think those are good ways to think about it if this is your first time really hearing about the feminine, the masculine, how they both exist within everyone. And at different times of your life, different situations, you need more than the other.
Exactly. Exactly. And as you know, and you've had, you've definitely had events in the space, but the sun and the moon, and just the way that the cosmos, um, just the dynamic with nature, and as we are nature, is we really understand that, right? That is us, and we understand that the importance of working with those cycles. Everything is a cycle, whether it is on a daily basis. The sun rises, the sun goes down, the moon, it waxes and wanes, and it all of that. It's these cycles, and so that's such a huge part, and something that even for myself, over these years of just, um, observing, right? Not only myself, but just all of the women that I've been in contact with, is everything is cycles. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And if we can really begin to, um, understand how to work with them, things flow. The challenges don't stop, right? The challenges absolutely do not stop. And that is one of the biggest things that I have to say, that I'm so thankful for, all the women that have taught me this, right? And I want to make sure that this is something that I give back, right? Like as a mirror, is that, um, we are here to evolve, and that the only way to do that is, working with the energy, um, that we were born with, and that's learning who you are inside, and that at the end of the day is our biggest mission, right? And, um, I think supporting women in what they are passionate about ideas that they have, is that's how you can really tap into who, what you were born with.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good opportunity to ask, what advice do you have to people who are starting a side hustle or a business? I know a lot of creativity is flowing during this time.
Hmm.
And how are you able to craft a business, whatever it may look like, uh, with the energy that you want to share with others? Because I know you've done this in so many iterations for many years now. And what advice do you have in sharing your authenticity through something creative, a service, a product, something that you want to share with the world?
I think the first thing and the most important is to understand that traveling this journey of entrepreneurship is a mindset, right? First and foremost is understanding that successful entrepreneurs have a certain mindset. And it is, I think that if I could do this all over again, like I wish that I knew all of this. I know that business school would never teach you this. And I don't come from that background. Entrepreneurship was nothing that I ever imagined that I would want to be in. At times it's really scary. And I even question myself. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs do this at times, right? That imposter syndrome. But it is really, it is about starting, right? It sounds simple, but it's super hard. And I think the best thing is to understand that to be an entrepreneur, we really should not be doing it alone, right? Whatever we are doing should not be done alone. Um, Now, that's not to say, right, at the very beginning, you are going to be wearing many, many hats. And that's where the mindset of understanding, again, the cycles. So that mindset is understanding that everything is a cycle in this journey. There are going to be ups and downs daily, weekly, monthly, and they're going to be different, right? So knowing that that's going to happen, and being able to provide yourself with the tools of how to deal with your emotions. Because what I see so often is that entrepreneurs will bring their emotions, their daily, like their personal emotions into the business. They'll call it their baby. And that is, it just makes it really hard to stay in your own lane, you know? Um, but it is to identify at the beginning, uh, and again, this is not like in one day you're going to figure this out, or 1 week, or even 1 month. It's probably going to take a good year, even longer, maybe shorter too. But identify what what your resources are, right? Who around you, who's good at what, right? Maybe you might have a friend that is good at writing that could help you copyright some of your content, whether it's for social media, or you might have somebody who's good at marketing. And it doesn't mean that you need to take up all their time, but it's understanding who is willing to support you during those first steps that you are taking. And then also being very open and receptive to what it is that you like doing, right? In that year, you're going to find out, with all the hats that you're wearing, what you really don't like to do, because, or things that you really love to do, right? And that's when you're going to start identifying things that you would like to outsource. And at the first year, you might not even have enough revenue to outsource things, but you can be creative. And that's what Femme Fatale DC, that's really about what it is to um, know that there's resources out there, even if it's just a conversation, right? Somebody can just provide you with, like, for example, like packaging. I know so many ladies, they struggle with, um, and I know even myself personally as a jewelry designer, I've struggled with packaging, and that has held me up. I'm talking about for months. Where do I
It's
get
tough.
packaging from?
It's
It's
tough, the
tough.
packaging.
Yeah. And design, and especially now, I mean, again, it's exponential growth that has happened in packaging and labeling. But guess what? We have a whole slew of women that are well seasoned, and it's about asking, right? It is about asking. And if you are the person who is being asked, don't don't hoard that information. Don't hoard that information. So I think that, you know, entrepreneurship goes both ways. It's about being able to be vulnerable, to ask and say, I don't know. And then on the flip side, um, understanding that you have this knowledge that you need to help fuel this creative ecosystem that you're part of, whether it is local, like Femme Fatale DC, or on this larger creative economy.
And I remember that's how our friendship started.
Yeah.
Someone was
Yes.
like, "Oh, you really have to meet Adriana. She has this amazing space that, like my friend had told me you're hosting a lot of events and she has a beautiful space." And so we connected at the previous location and we've done a couple beautiful events together. And I just remembered that you were the one that inspired me to create this workshop called Work Wellness. Do you remember?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And it was
Yes.
really at the beginning stages of me stepping into my power and the ability to share something that I didn't know that I could even share, to help creatives and entrepreneurs organize their days and prioritize. And I shared a lot of the information you just did about how to start,
Hmm.
and the support that you need. And ultimately, that kind of turned into the manifestation workbook that I created and classes that I at that taught that really have a practical application of manifestation.
Hmm.
And it was, for me, it was such a big leap to lead that workshop. And you were like, no, people need it. People ask me
Hmm.
about this all the time. I need it. And
Yep.
that was that was that was what I needed to get started. You gave me the space. You shared it with the community, and I put it out in my own community. It was like very, very much so, just starting off at that time. And we
Hmm.
had such a lovely group of people that came together.
Absolutely. And I love how what you just said is, you know, providing space, right? I saw something in you that you knew. I mean, you already knew. You had this idea, and you had told me bits and pieces, and you articulated that to me, and I was like, absolutely. Like, I was able to see, like, this is a necessity. And I'm just so happy to hear that, this seed just kept on, planting new seeds, right?
It's a tree
Um,
now.
it's a tree. It's absolutely with different facets, right? Like all the leaves, petals, those are different facets. Some will glisten in the sun and during, certain times of the day, while others, take on the shade. But you have that. You have so many paths that you can go down and create a whole forest for yourself.
And I think that, you're right. People are afraid to start something because they're like, I don't know how it's going to go. Is this even right? But that's really the first step, is
Yeah.
just to start. And it doesn't have to look right. And that's what I promised myself. I'm like, I don't know if people are going to like these topics, these ideas, but let's just see like where we go, because you can never really predict where something is going to go because many things change.
Yeah.
along the way.
Yes. Yes. And that is, I guess that there's just like really a message for everybody is, and especially in these times, I mean, COVID and all the injustices that are being cracked open, which is, while it's so infuriating, it's such a blessing, because what I am seeing is that this reality that we had before was just all this falseness, right? It was
Hmm.
so limiting. And uh, we are limitless. And I think that is the the biggest change. Like, yes, there's so much creativity in DC, but there's so much creativity all over the world. And now we're beginning to see that these systems that we were a part of really limited our imagination, right?
Yes.
That's the magic that we talk about, is because the magic comes from this part of ourselves that can just like be quirky, can be weird, can we are all weird, and we all pretend to create these facades that we aren't, but we are. And it's so great, right? Like, I used to try to hide that, but no, I'm very weird. Um, so yeah, it's that imagination. And I think that when I say just get started, um, I say get started by having conversations with people, putting your idea out there. And I'm talking about like whether it's with family, even if it's family that doesn't agree with it, right? What they're going to show, or people that don't, they might undermine what your idea is. Take that, because what it's going to do is going to help you create a framework, right, for what it is, and a belief system for yourself. When people oppose you, or when things oppose, they help you solidify and articulate what your values are, what is important to you. So that's what I say. Part of getting started is having those conversations and putting your idea out there. I have an idea now, and I keep on just having these conversations. And I was very slow to do it. Um, but I'm finally like, no, I'm just going to start talking this into existence. Now, it's not going to be,
Yes.
I know it's not going to turn out what's in my head, but something's going to come along that is just right. And yeah,
But you're speaking about it. You're sharing it with
yeah,
others so that it can crystallize and start to get a little bit more tangible in the physical
hmm,
world.
yeah, yep,
Yeah. I just think there's such it's tough right now because there are few places that are starting their brick and mortars. But there is still so much to be said about creating something digitally. You can still infuse your energy, your intention of creating community or whatever it may be in the thing that you're creating and sharing online. I know that I have moved everything online. I started a monthly membership, and my intention is to provide that community, that knowledge, the insights, and the support needed for people to progress on their spiritual path, in a lighthearted way, in a fun way, meeting other people.
hmm, yep,
You
yep,
can still feel it.
absolutely, absolutely. And I know, I mean, yeah, this is a whole new, playing field for all of us. Definitely, it's something. It's a challenge, for FFDC, because we were built on creating these physical connections, right, and that energy, and so just like, a lot of these women that are new to this journey of entrepreneurship, this is new for us. And so nothing is ever set in stone. We're always experimenting, we're always playing and figuring things out, and seeing what is the best move for us. And so yeah, taking things virtually and creating that energy, I think, is, um something that we are definitely sprinting towards. I mean, we have the online shop now, which was, again,
Big
when
lift. Big
yeah,
lift.
when I said, I don't know how this is going to happen, right? Like, how do I move all the things that were in the store online, um, and do it in, again, I had this pressure because I saw other businesses, right, doing certain things, feeling this pressure. But I also understood everything that I've learned from our personal journey is that things have to be organic, and it does have to flow with an energy. And so, after 2 months in May, we finally launched it. Um, but it's something that we can be proud of, right? It might not have happened right away. And of course we wanted this last year, but it's here. And it happened because the team that we have was like, no, we can, and we're going to do it. And we're going to do it in less than a month, right? Like, this is what's going to happen. And so, yeah, I think, one of the things that our community keeps on asking is, workshops and
Mm-hmm.
other ways that we connect. And so, yeah, that is definitely the next, um, step that we're taking, and trying to be creative in doing that, and creating space for that community.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about you creating a program or something that can help support creatives during this time.
Yeah, definitely. That's we are we create space, right? This is something that really we are very confident, in being able to say is that's what we do, right? We don't have to do everything, but we do create space for others to put their ideas out there. We are this, in a sense, we're like a library, right? People come to us to ask about, hey, do you know somebody who does this, or do you know about this subject, or can you help me with this? And so we this year it was like, it's time to take all this knowledge, and all the resources that we have within the community, and package it up, right? This is something that we are still working on, of what these packages look like, right? Whether they are, um, one of the things that I've talked about for a very long time is doing a skill share for us local um, entrepreneurs, and creatives. Um, and or is it webinars or ebooks, or I think the sky is the limit. It But again, as any business, we have to really kind of go back and kind of reevaluate and evaluate, uh, what we have, and who we want to target this towards. So again, cycles, right? Like, this is something new. It's something that needs to be birthed. So while we're established in some areas, this is brand new territory for us.
Yes, I feel like just adjusting to the new normal, I've gone through so many different cycles already in learning.
Hmm.
I've
Yep,
learned many new platforms, new tools to help me put the business online and to reach more people.
exactly. Exactly. And I think, uh, one of the things, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had two ladies come on talking, providing us with some insight into marketing. And one of the best pieces of advice that they provided was, this is a time that we need to nurture our existing community, right? Whatever that means to you, whoever your audience is, it's not a time to get, focus on new, perspectives and clients, customers, whatever that may be. The best thing is to nurture what you already have. And that is what is those are the people, your supporters, who have been there from the beginning. And so I think uh, that is one of the things that I hope that, people can really take and, and, utilize that in their own business and helping them grow.
Yes, especially if you've been established, even just for a year, to really kind of see, why do people like what you do and how can you
Hmm.
share more of that with them?
Yeah. Yep.
You may know that Woo Woo Company is actually my third entrepreneurial venture. And to be honest, it's the one that I care the most about. And I've loved building it, creating it, and sharing it with others. One of the most important things that I've learned is the power of community. How there are so many people who will lift you up and help you once you set an intention out into the world, an intention to create something, to serve, and to share something special with others. Adriana is one of those people that has helped me in my journey, and I know I've done the same for her. It's through friendships like these that truly make a difference in a business. If you're looking to start something of your own, whether just for fun or an extra income stream, know that the first step is to start and then see where things take you. For this episode's workbook, there are some prompts and guides on how to infuse a specific energy into a business, and also how to be more mindful of what you are sharing based on the energy that you are currently carrying. I'd love to know what creative ventures you are starting or you've started. Always feel free to connect with me via Instagram at WOOWOOCO. Do you have a friend that wants to start a business or do something creative? Share this episode with them. And if you enjoy this podcast, give it a 5-star rating. For those who haven't joined the monthly membership yet, you can join any time of the month. Even if you miss a workshop, you'll still get the recording. This monthly membership is filled with wonderful events, meditations, workbooks. You get all the podcast workbooks, sound baths, and a growing community of like-minded individuals. It's truly something that I wish I had when I started off on my journey, because it's so much better when there's support, especially when you're just starting to figure things out for yourself, creating a new reality and shifting your mindset. Find more information in the show notes, and I hope to see you in this community.